Look at that emotion.
Around the outside. It's time to bring the action.
Yeah, we're back. SMX Insider rolls on. We are the Jasons, Wygan and Thomas here to talk about Pro Motocross in the Super Motocross World Championship. Although everything was on pause for 2 weekends, where we went to the Monster Energy AMA Amateur National Championship. If you want to see age progression at the last week's episode and now, because the days in between shows, I was at Loretta's. Huge days, huge credit to the AMA and MX Sports and everyone who pulled that off in the rain. It definitely added years to my face and took years off my life. JT, the only constant in this sport right now is Jett Lawrence, still undefeated, and he might actually be able to wrap the title this weekend at Unadilla.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, he's going to turn 20 years old, and as he progresses towards, you know, all the conversation about a perfect season, he's still got to win this championship, and he has a great opportunity. If he can go get the win, maybe Dylan Ferrandis doesn't have his best day, he could clinch this weekend at Unadilla, and then I think all of the conversation shifts to the perfect season. I think maybe he would be a little bit more talkative about it, and we could get some information out of guys like Johnny O and maybe his mechanic as well.
Remember, 3 races remain in Pro Motocross. We're a month away, essentially, from the playoffs beginning. Super Motocross World Championship playoffs for the first time in this sport. So it'll be interesting to see how that looks even after the motocross season. But there's one title that's still very, very, very much up for grabs. That's the 250 class. Hayden Deegan surging, 3 points behind Hunter Lawrence. And do not count out Justin Cooper, who is within 20 points. And all the spoilers. It's going to be good.
Yeah, it is. And I think this championship is far from over, right? We've talked about it. It really felt like it narrowed down to Hayden Deegan and Hunter Lawrence, but Justin Cooper and RJ Hampshire are just sitting back there a handful of points away. So if we get a little bit of unusual results, maybe a crash, maybe a bad start here and there, I think this championship could really come back into a 4-way fight. But either way, I think it's going to come down to that final moto at Ironman to see who wins this 250 title.
All right, this is going to be awesome. The stretch run before the playoffs and the Lawrence brothers trying to ice both titles. Remember, Honda won everything in Supercross as well. Can they keep this going? That's what we're going to be looking for over the next couple of weeks. 30-second board time. Let's run you through some hot topics as we head to Unadilla and resume Super Motocross World Championship this weekend. When we mentioned the playoffs, it's basically a month now, if you look at it by the calendar. 3 motocross races, a weekend off, and then we'll start at ZMAX Dragway outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And as predictable as this Jett Lawrence season has been, where he's winning every race, I think that might be what we're looking for now. A different type of track, a different type of format. We don't even know who's racing necessarily. That's what's going to make it wild to get a big change-up after motocross.
Yeah, I think there are more questions than answers for what we're going to see in this SMX playoffs. The tracks are going to be different. It's going to be a little bit of motocross, a little bit of supercross. We're going to speedway venues. There's just going to be a lot of change. And oh yeah, Jett Lawrence is going to be on a 450 inside an arena. Like, we're going to get that, a taste of that, maybe a little look forward to 2024 for the first time. So there's a lot to be excited about. And I think change is great. This whole new format, the points are going to get really crazy as the races escalate. So it's going to be a great weekend all around.
And as a hybrid between Supercross and motocross, yes, these are man-made venues with seating if you go to Charlotte or Chicagoland Speedway or the LA Memorial Coliseum, but they want to give that motocross feel. So the first 2 races will actually have camping. We've shown you the map before. There's trackside camping, so you can have your tent or easy up right next to the track, just like you would at, say, Red Bud or Unadilla this weekend in designated sections of the track. And it's a multi-day format, so we encourage people to even come in Friday. I'll give you some details on that, but I think that's the main thing. If you've been to the Atlanta Supercross or Daytona and you think that's the way the playoffs are going to look, a little bit, but no, this is going to be a lot different than what we've seen before.
Yeah, we had that interview with Mike Muley a month or so ago, and he really explained how they were going to integrate motocross in these tracks and raise the speeds and change the obstacles that these riders are going to face. So I think it is going to look like a completely different type of race than we've ever had before. So there's going to be a lot of learning from the riders. I think if they come in with preconceived notions, they're probably going to be wrong, and it's going to be great. It's going to be like nothing we've ever seen before.
And because the riders and teams want to learn this as well, we're going to have Friday practice. So why not do a whole Friday show? So we're encouraging fans, especially if you're camping, to come on Thursday and then enjoy all the entertainment on Friday. We'll have some entertainment for you. We'll be part of that. We'll have things to do at the track and press conference and riding sessions, which is real practice, not just press day. And I got to imagine, first of all, the fans are going to love to see this on Friday. But for the riders, JT, I don't even know if they know how to test. This Friday practice thing might be the first time they start to learn what this is going to look like.
Yeah, and that's what I was alluding to. Like, you don't want to put yourself into a position where you're locked into settings, because that may be way off, and then you'd have to completely reassess. So I think coming in with an open mind, having a few different directions that you could go with the motorcycle is really going to be the best course of action. But it's going to be who's the most adaptable, who can figure out what works the best. And it's going to be a little bit of compromise for the riders on the motorcycle. You're not going to be able to go full supercross settings. You're certainly not going to be able to go full motocross settings. So it's who can find something that they're most comfortable with and figure it out quickly.
Yeah, we look forward to having the fans there. We haven't really had a Friday atmosphere or a day before the race atmosphere for a long, long time in the sport. So that'll be cool, because we've switched to a one-day format at most races, geez, for about a dozen years now. Let's resume our 250 championship fight. I just want a refresher and a reminder. Let's go back to Hayden Deegan winning our last race at Washougal, and here's what he said on the podium.
Those last few laps, I'm like, I'm putting my heart into this thing, baby. And man, it's nerve-wracking, and I'm sure it's nerve-wracking for Hunter too. He's supposed to be winning these things, and I'm glad I could put the American up front for all the fans.
Oh yeah, as far as I'm concerned, JT, those are words pointed directly at the Hunter Lawrence camp. The America thing, and also the he should be nervous. He's the one that's supposed to be winning these races. Although you and I have talked about this pressure that he's maybe trying to apply. I don't know if that applies to Hunter Lawrence. Do you think that's going to change Hunter Lawrence's mentality at all? Deegan's trying.
Well, I don't think that Hunter necessarily loves those comments, but I also don't think that he's going to necessarily take the bait either, right? He's going to focus on what he needs to do. He's going to understand that through the first course of the season, he was the best rider. And Hayden had a very, very good day at Washougal. But now we're down to 3 races, and the points are so tight, it's really a 3-race shootout to see who's going to become champion of this. And I think if you offered Hunter Lawrence this opportunity, that it's really between you and Hayden Deegan and a 3-point gap for 3 rounds, would you take that? I think he takes that every single time. So I think if you frame it that way, he's in a very good position here.
Let me throw another one at you. We've seen a couple of aggressive riding situations where Deegan gets really defensive when he's trying to get past Supercross with his teammate Jordan Smith. And then with Hunter Lawrence at Colorado earlier in the year, those Yamahas get great starts. Starts are not really a strength of Hunter. At some point, I think he's going to have to pass Hayden. Will he start thinking about things then? Because we don't know with the rookie what he'll do.
I think you're going to see that aggression come out. He's been very selective with how he's dealt with Hunter in those spots. Thunder Valley in Colorado, as you mentioned, was the first time that I saw him employ some of those tactics that we know he has in his arsenal. So I think now with the championship the way it is, if Hunter has to make that pass, or if they're battling whatsoever, I think you're going to see Hayden up the aggression. I think Hayden has gone from sort of the underling, the person that felt like he was learning from a guy like Hunter Lawrence, to now he is a direct competitor, and they're going to head-to-head. So I think all bets are off. I think you're going to see a much more aggressive and almost an instigator a little bit out of Hayden Deegan, and maybe try to get Hunter Lawrence off his game a bit.
Hey, while we had a break from our championship with 2 weekends off, some new news about new brands coming in. Triumph has been teasing a bike with our guy Ricky Carmichael for a while now, and they showed the frame of that new bike. But meanwhile, Beta, very quietly, has already been building their motocross arsenal. They already race in MXGP in Europe, but they have a works bike rule. We're kind of waiting to see what it would look like on a production rule side. They announced a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, that Benny Bloss will be on the team next year, and now Colt Nichols being added to the squad. So Nichols and Bloss, that's a pretty serious effort for Beta. And yes, they will enter Supercross for the first time starting next year.
Yeah, it was interesting. I knew that they were courting Colt Nichols for a while now, and he had a couple of other options. He wasn't sure what he was going to do, but I think this new opportunity, and I think what Colt's looking at is they can develop this bike and get it up to par and on the level of the other factory teams. This is a place he could call home for the foreseeable future. Instead of this bouncing around, maybe he's in a fill-in ride, something that doesn't have a long-term future. You build a base here and they, consider you their guy. He could be at Beta for the next 5 years or so, right? They could build their team around him, and that's a pretty attractive option.
And for those that don't know, Beta is a trials brand primarily, and then they moved into the off-road racing space like Enduro and GNCC and now into motocross. I did ask Nichols this morning, his Beta deal he carved out where he can still show up on that borrowed Kawasaki, race some motocross rounds to get SMX playoff points, and he will be a part of the playoffs still and then he'll get on the beta when he needs to for testing and for next season. So that's cool that we're not going to lose Nichols, because Bloss did not race motocross because he's fully focused on developing that bike for next year. So other news that's taking place, again, with the time off, I think it's like the perfect time to focus on this. New teams, and of course, who's going to be on Team USA for Motocross of Nations. You and I are really good friends with Paul Parabinos, who's part of the team now and has the Raise It for USA fundraiser. You can play golf with us on Sunday after our SMX finale in California in September and raise money for the team. The real question is who's going to be on it. I'm hearing could Cooper Webb reemerge on a Yamaha? Can he be part of Team USA? I'm all for that. I think that'd be great. We'll see if it comes together. Obviously, there's some secrecy as Webb when he will be seen on his bike. But I think that's an intriguing pick.
Yeah, it's really all over the map. The options I've heard range from how Justin Barcia does when he returns, so hope he comes back to Unadilla, to Cooper Webb making some sort of motocross debut on the Yamaha. I've heard RJ Hampshire would be willing to jump on a 450. So I've run across the entire gamut. Is Chase Sexton going to show up on a Honda? We don't know. There are so many possibilities, and I think that will delay the team being announced. I don't think we're going to get any sort of early announcement. I think they're going to take their time. I would expect something like Ironman, where they can really allow every option to play out. It's unfortunate Justin Cooper doesn't sound like he's in the cards here, and Hayden Deegan has certainly made his case over the last few weeks. So I don't have any guesses. Every time I thought I was on the right path for what this team was going to look like, I think I've been proven wrong thus far. But let's hope we can put the best team together. We're coming off the first win in a decade, and I think we need to follow that up with putting our best foot forward in France.
And you can help with that Raise It for USA. Go to raiseit4usa.com and you can donate, or you can donate by signing up and playing with us in the golf tournament on Sunday. It's kind of a perfect end of the season wrap up. Like, what would the riders do when the 31 race championship wraps up? Well, they're probably going to go play golf on a Sunday. So go do it with them and us. And then the money you spend to do that goes right to the team. I think you'd be surprised. We're obviously talking about millionaire athletes, but there isn't really any specific funding earmarked by anyone for Team USA. So when we get them money, it gives them more support. I'll give you some examples. They can have a rig that they can all pit out of together instead of being in their team trucks. We had video people videoing lines that they could study after practice. You got to pay those folks to shoot. On and on it goes. The more staff, the more support. Other countries like France, who have dominated this event as of late, have these types of things in place. This is how you compete. So raiseit4usa.com. Come play with us after the LA Memorial Coliseum event. So I mentioned at the top of the show, I spent the week at Loretta Lynns. JT, you've been there a whole bunch as a racer. You know what the experience is all about. And part of the experience is the weather. It's going to be super hot and humid, and it's going to rain. This is the most rain I've ever seen there. Did you race the 95 event? One of them flooded and they didn't get the third motos in, but otherwise this is about as bad as we've ever had it.
Yeah, it was a tough week as a racer and a competitor. Even if you're just a family member, and that's a very underreported part of this, is the entire family is there, right? Your brothers and sisters, and everybody is a part of this effort for every racer there. And when it rains like this for multiple days on end, everything is flooded. Of course, if you're on racertv.com watching the race, you see the track. But what you don't see is every pit area, every road, every access way is underwater. It's just unescapable mud. You cannot get away from the water and the mud for an entire week once it starts raining like this. So it's a tough deal. And you feel for all the competitors because there's so much that goes into this, so much preparation, so much hard work. And then the rain's coming, you can just throw that all out the window. It really becomes a crapshoot of, is your bike gonna make it the whole way? Are you gonna, have to throw your goggles out? Are you gonna be in a first turn pile up? Like, all the racing dynamic completely changes. And you feel for everybody the incredible amount of hard work that people like Davey Coombs and all of the MX Sports staff put in just to have a functioning event, just to try to keep this thing going. And I think I watched bulldozers work for, 6 or 8 hours just because I had nothing to do at work watching this all unfold. What a traumatic turn of events. I felt for you. You're standing on the podium interviewing all these riders for an entire week. The announcers, you just think about this heroic effort that everybody put in just to make this event run under the worst possible weather circumstances.
I'll give you some quick highlights. Folks that watch Supercross Futures and the Motocross Scouting Combines this year, remember Casey Cochran, Julian Beaumer, and Daxton Bennett have kind of been the outstanding riders in those events. Cochran starts the week out great, dominates his first 2 B-class motos, then he crashes and dislocates his shoulder, and then somehow salvages a 5th in another moto, and then wins his final moto to go 151 and still dig out a title. Beaumer had a great race in the dry, a bad race in the mud, and then when the track was at its worst muddy-wise, he had his best moto, but that second bad moto when it was semi-muddy, that ruined his title chances. Daxton Bennick did go 1-1-1 in a class. He wins the AMA Nicky Hayden Horizon Award. Fans probably remember him racing Redbud and a couple of others as a pro. He'll make his debut full-time at Unadilla. And through all that mud, Gavin Towers, who you might not have heard of yet, because I think he missed the Futures races this year coming back from a collarbone injury, he won the other pro sport class where Bennick had problems there. So watch out for Gavin Towers. I think might end up being on Star Racing along with Bennick. So those are the names to watch coming out of Loretta's and into the immediate future. And one other class to mention from there, the Micro E, that's the electric 50cc size bike class. The top 15 of that division are all automatically seeded. We'll have what's similar to a KTM Junior Supercross Challenge at the SMX race at Los Angeles. So congrats to those little guys. They earned it in the mud at a motocross track. I don't think they'll deal with those conditions when we get to Los Angeles.
Yeah, let's hope not. That would be catastrophic. To get that type of rain in LA would be something biblical, right? But yes, to see those riders come out of Loretta's and get to ride at an SMX finale, which we've never had before. I've only raced at the LA Coliseum once, and it was in the mud, unfortunately, in 1998. So let's hope they fare a little bit better than I did.
Yeah, they were all focused on trying to win the title at Loretta's, but that's a nice bonus. The top 15 from Loretta's for the Micro E class will be racing at the LA Memorial Coliseum. Hey, you mentioned earlier in the show, we think Justin Barcia may be back here for Unadilla. We've had the watch on him going for quite some time.
Yeah, I think he's coming back. He was riding in Italy at the Gas intro a couple of weeks ago. And I think when you're watching someone who's able to go that pace and you know he wants to come back at his home race of Unadilla. So it just makes too much sense. And I'm hearing that he's riding pretty well. Now, the question is, a guy like Barcia, he loves to be the instigator. He loves to get in there and cause a little drama. I don't think it's always intentional. It's just who he is. Could you picture this, Barcia getting a hole shot and just him being the decider of whether Jett goes perfect or not, right? He has that capability. You give Justin Barcia a hole shot at his home race where Jett Lawrence is going in 16-0, and I think you just get fireworks. So just something to watch for there.
And here's what's on the line for Barcia and anyone that wants to get back in this, the 450 SMX Points Fund. So there's $400,000 per race in the individual per race purse, but then the points, when we told them up at the end of the playoffs, look at how crazy this is. It's $1 million to win the title. Now, that should be the headline, but I feel like people like you and I, JT, know that if you win the Supercross or a motocross title, you're probably going to get something like that as a bonus from your team. And we used to have the Monster Energy Cup that paid $1 million. $1 million is a lot of money, but we're kind of used to that. What shocks me the most is that 10th and 8th place where you're battling around six figures. That is the type of thing we've never seen before. So that's why guys like Barcia, we mentioned Colt Nichols, some others that we'll talk about in a moment, that's the real motivation to me. We've never seen a pay this deep.
Yeah, and the money at the top, right? Those guys, they make a lot of money anyway, as they should. But you're talking about, as I've mentioned before on this very show, life-changing money for some of these riders. If they can creep into that top 10, right? You've had a really consistent year. You put 3 strong races together, you can change the landscape of your financial future this season. So it's a really great thing that's happening. The opportunity could not be any bigger for these riders. And that's why you're seeing all these riders come out of the woodwork, buying motorcycles, borrowing motorcycles, finding any way possible to show up at these pro motocross events, because they know at the end of September, they look back and there's all this money that will all be worth it.
Let me show you the 450 Super Motocross points. We're going to get in depth with this a little more in a moment. But when you look at the points, a couple things. Chase Sexton is probably going to be, because we know that Webb is out, for example, unless Plessinger mounts an incredible rally. Sexton will probably start the playoffs with 25 points, so that's one interesting angle. But the Jett Lawrence watch continues. How big a lead will these guys have on Lawrence going into the playoffs? As you can see, it's not going to be much.
Yeah, it's going to get tight here, and I think you have to start thinking about strategy. You know, they do get more points at the top, right? They're going to enter with a lead over the riders behind them, and how does that play out? I tend to think that the points escalator, right? We're going to double the points at round 2 and triple the points at round 3 are going to negate a little bit of this. But I think if you're Sexton, it's that mental game. We've been talking about the mental fight between Jett and Sexton, and Cooper Webb was in that conversation when he was still in this series too. But who's going in with the points lead? That is a big factor in this. And I think Jett, he's going to have to make up some points. But I think for Chase, he's going to look at this and say, yeah, I have the most points of the whole season. I'm your reigning Monster Energy Supercross champion. So yeah, great, Jett, you've had a fantastic Pro Motocross season, but we're going inside now and you're going to have to dethrone me there.
Fowler's Facts time. We're going to dive deeper into the SMX standings and playoff implications for the 450 class. Covered 250s last week. We bring back our statistician, Clinton Fowler. Let's first continue to look at top 20. Those riders get into the motos at SMX automatically. What are we looking at in the 450 class as far as who's going to get in?
Yeah, Weege. So first things first, the top 20 projected cutoff is 163 points. It's actually currently where Colt Nichols sits. That's going to be the key piece for people trying to make the top 20. Now, the most important piece, arguably, is we've got 9 riders that have mathematically clinched into those top 20 playoff spots. And by mathematically clinched, what I mean is no matter what happens for the remainder of the year, what people score, these guys are in. And those 9 guys, Chase Sexton, Aaron Plessinger, Cooper Webb, Adam Cincerulo, Jett Lawrence, Dylan Ferrandis, Jason Anderson, Ken Roxon, and Eli Tomac. Those guys are in. Then we've got automatic bids. There's 6 riders that have won a Supercross race. They've won a moto. Obviously, Jett's the only one that's won a moto here this year. But there's only one guy in those automatic bids, Justin Barcia, that hasn't mathematically clinched. But as we know, guys, he's coming back this weekend at his home race in Unadilla, so I expect that to be the case. But JT, one of the things that I think is really interesting here is what is the mental edge for getting into the top 20 and getting those seeding points now?
Well, no one wants to race those LCQs. That's going to be the most critical aspect of it. And remember, you'd have to race the LCQ at all 3 rounds. So that's not going to be any fun for anybody. So just knowing that you're in those main events and being able to focus on the actual racing ahead of you instead of that just traumatic experience. You travel across the country and you may not even be a part of the night's racing. So I think getting in there, that's where you're seeing all these guys that are on the bubble really pushing and all the extravagant distances they're going to just to get into these races, because yes, locking in one of those 20 spots is probably the most important aspect of many of these riders' seasons entirely.
Yeah, Shane McElrath said the reason he came back is he knew he'd probably at least get top 30 and have the LCQ to get in. And he said he wants no part of the LCQ at these 3 races. So you're exactly right, JT. Guys that are even sure they're going to make the event in some capacity don't want to do it to the LCQ. They want to get in. Anyone else in position here to clinch? We think, as you said, Barcia is going to be back. Anyone else on the horizon there?
Yeah, with Unadilla, I think after the weekend's done, we're going to see Justin Barcia. I think that's almost a guaranteed lock, whether he races or not. And if he races, he's going to score a handful of points and lock him in. The other one, which I think is a really great story, is Freddie Noren. I've got him needing about 10 to 12 points, depending on how other folks perform. So Freddie Noren, I think after Unadilla, is going to be one of those 9. He'll join the 9 that have clinched into the top 20.
Anyone else that we're watching maybe with an outside shot at it?
Yeah, I think there's 3 riders that are really interesting to watch in these last 3 rounds, guys. The first is Jose Butron. I think he's almost a guarantee to be in the top 20. He's currently 22nd. He needs 31 points to meet that top 20 cutoff. I've got him projected at 50 points, so I think he's going to end up 19th. So I think he's good to go. But guys, there's 2 that I think are really interesting to watch. Phil Nicoletti and Derek Drake. Both those guys, they're 27th and 28th. I've got them projected as 23rd and 24th. But a great moto or 2 could change that dynamic. And so, back to your point, JT, I mean, nobody wants to go to these LCQs. I can imagine a guy like Phil, that's the last thing he wants as well.
Right, and they don't want to be there. But I think it's incredible that a guy like Jose Butron is almost a shoo-in at this point. And if you had asked him going into this Pro Motocross series, or if you'd asked me, I would have said there's slim to 0 chance that he is going to make the SMX playoffs. But he has been fantastic this entire summer. So a rider like that, who I don't think he's ever signed up for a Monster Energy Supercross race before, could be in the most prestigious playoffs that this series has ever seen. So it's just one of the storylines this summer. And I think that is an incredible thing for him at his age. He's in his 30s now to be lining up and have a locked in spot. That's incredible.
This is starting to feel a little more real now, isn't it, with only a month to go before the playoffs?
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, it's getting down to crunch time in these final few spots, so we'll get to see if guys can make that top 20.
Yep. And don't forget, like I said, Colt Nichols has the beta deal for next year, but he can still race his old Kawasaki, and he does plan on coming back for at least one more motocross round. So just to give you an example how badly riders want to lock themselves in, they'll do whatever it takes. Now, here's something coming this weekend that's really cool. We'll be back on NBC for our Unadilla coverage. We'll have both Ricky Carmichael and James Stewart in the booth. We've talked all season with those two about what it's like to have a perfect season, which Jett Lawrence is trying to do. But during the break, we got even more in-depth. James Stewart actually went and hung out with Jett Lawrence to talk perfection. We'll have a full feature on this weekend's TV show, but here's a sneak peek.
What's up, man? What's up, champ? That's the 18th green over there. This is my mom.
Give me a hug. Hunter doesn't live here, right?
No.
Yeah. All right, all right. With a good crowd. I know they're gonna bring me down. I got love spreading all around.
Both of you guys, not just you, both of you guys are the face of the sport and just everything that comes along with it. Like anybody that comes up in this class, we're gonna have to go through not only one, but like you as well. How has like the success for you personally, when you're so young and everything has came, like your style, like you're that next upcoming guy, like you're winning everything. It is easy to kind of get full of yourself, but I could tell by the two people sitting next to you, like, I don't believe that's gonna happen.
I think we're the reason it hasn't happened, honestly.
No, for sure.
All right, we are off to upstate New York at Unadilla. A couple programming notes. If you're watching on Peacock or the Super Motocross Video Pass outside of the U.S., everything's pretty similar to usual. Race Day Live presented by motorsport.com at 10 a.m. Eastern, and we start racing at 1 o'clock. But please note, we will not have halftime break or a halftime show at this event. We're just going to go back to the 4 straight hours of motos. And the reason why is we want to fit into a live TV window we've gotten with the good folks at NBC. We'll have 2 straight hours of second moto coverage on television starting at 3. So no halftime. Second moto's back to starting at 3 o'clock. Up until this year, we never had 250s and 450s together on NBC. What a great time to do it, JT. A wild, historic track and an historic season here with this Jett Lawrence deal.
Yeah, Unadilla has so much history to it. I mean, it's some of the origins of motocross in America were built here at Unadilla. And then you bring in the new era of guys like Jett Lawrence, who is trying to wrap up his first 450 motocross championship at Unadilla. And something I would love for Quentin Fowler to fill us in on. Have we ever seen a motocross championship wrapped up at Unadilla this early? I know the schedule's a little bit different, but he could be making history this weekend at Unadilla. So it's a little bit of new, a little bit of old, but what a weekend it's going to be.
Yeah, the NBC shows are always a great way for the regular crowd that maybe doesn't follow the sport every week to have a little window into the sport. When you talk 20-year-old rookie having a perfect season in the premier class, and then Hayden Deegan versus Hunter Lawrence in the 250 class at Unadilla, if you're going to get a window into the sport, that's one of the best views you're ever going to get. So enjoy it this weekend. Again, no halftime, 4 straight hours of motos starting at 1 o'clock Eastern. We will be there. Hopefully you can join us.